Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California at 5:10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, USA. How are you? John Clark, how are you? Tom Krebs, how are you? Gina Portov, how are you? I am going to say hi to people that show up at this moment as well. And who else comes on here? Mary Lynn Talheimer, Mandy Olekshi, and Mary Lucas Soth, and all the M's. um, okay, so today we're reading The R Factor by Maris Segal, Ken Ashby. The R Factor, Evolving Our Human Relationship Story. This is a national bestseller. Discover the universal rhythms for learning, leading prosperous relationships. And we're in chapter 6, choices. How you choose to give is how you choose to live. That's what it says. Later that week, Mindy took her book, The Universal Relationship Rhythms, to bed, hoping to read a chapter or two before she dozed off. She was finding the book to be intriguing, and she was making her and it was making her take a hard look at her relationships and her life in a different light. In doing so, she found herself questioning her role in all of the relationships she'd had, as well as the relationships that were lacking. How was she showing up in them? Initially, the title piqued her interest because picked the title piqued her interest because of its reference to music, something which, of course, was predominant in her life. But she knew that within the world, her relationships didn't carry emotional attachments. Always the ultimate professional, she'd been profoundly successful in avoiding any perception of favoritism or improper relationships with any member of her team or the artists and musicians they served. Being honest with herself, though, she was more interested in learning about the universal relationship rhythms in her personal life. Lately, instead of focusing on the abundance in her family life, she felt the lack of relationships had become more noticeable to her, and she wondered why. What was it deep inside her, a yearning for something that was lacking but that was very much needed? Or was she just second guessing herself and the choices she'd made throughout the years? Hopefully, oh, good morning, Liz Rose Cantara. How are you? Or was she just second guessing herself and the choices she'd made throughout the years? Hopefully, the book would provide her with some insight into the answers. After 15 minutes of reading, though, Mindy was distracted by a sudden ache in her neck. As she reached her hand back to rub her muscles, she tried to return her attention to the book, but found that her eyes couldn't focus on the words as she experienced a couple flashes of bright light right before her vision dimmed. Putting the book down, she closed her eyes tightly and shook her head as if to shake away whatever was happening. When she opened her eyes, it took about 20 seconds until she regained focus. Wow, I must be more tired than I thought. The best thing I can do right now is get some sleep, she told herself. The fact that everything was fine the next morning validated her thoughts. She was simply tired and needed more sleep. Quickly putting the incident out of her mind, she turned her attention to packing her suitcase yet again to prepare for a 4-day trip back to the West Coast. As Rose sat on her bed, on Normand days when Mindy packed, they sang songs and shared silly jokes. At one point, Rose looked up and said, "When do I get to pack and go with you, Mommy?" Mindy's heart sank as she kissed Rose and promised, "As soon as we can plan, like my love, as soon as I can." Rose, seeming satisfied, went back to singing. The only opportunity Mindy would have to be off her feet for the next few days was during her flight to Los Angeles. She had snuck in an extra day with Rose and knew she'd pay a price for it in the days ahead. It would be all all hands on deck when she landed. Well worth it, she thought. She spent the time in air going over the details of the upcoming concert with her assistant producer Liz, just as they had done countless times before. Hey, Liz. After loading their luggage into their rental car, Mindy turned to Liz, who had been with her for 3 years. Are we good to go? She asked. Tossing the car keys to Mindy, Liz replied, Yes, I made sure we have everything, she reassured her. It was rare that they did not take a car service, but Liz had rented a car for this trip to get some off-site meetings. Mindy said yes to the rental on one condition. I drive from the airport. Mindy was not a fan of being a passenger and not being in control. You know something? I like that too myself. I've always considered myself second to best driver I've ever met, next to a trucker, 18-wheeler. Anyway, neither spoke for 10 minutes, and it was Liz who broke the silence. Mindy, can I ask you a question? Sure. What do you need? I don't need anything. I was just wondering how you manage Rose when you travel for work. Abram is almost 9 years old and he should be used to me traveling by now, but he still gets pouty when I leave. His dad is great with him, but what I hear most often is that he misses me. Sometimes I wonder if they both just want me to feel guilty. If so, I have to admit it works. I just wondered if Rose is like that with you and how you may handle it, Liz shared. Rose. Rose was always off the table. Rose was hers, and she didn't share her with anyone but her parents. Talking about Rose was too personal. Keeping her eyes on the road to avoid looking at Liz, she tried to figure out how to respond without making her feel uncomfortable. After all, her question was innocent, and she was asking for advice. Before she responded, though, Mindy's thoughts went to the book she had been reading and her reflections. It was Mindy who wasn't willing to create a personal connection and share. Rose was a part of her world that others were never allowed to see up until now. While she was formulating a supportive response, suddenly Mindy felt a sharp pain in the back of her head, and flashes of light danced before her. She blinked hard, hoping to make them disappear, but if anything, they became more frequent. Just as she had the night before, she shook her head from side to side, hoping to correct whatever was happening. Mindy, are you all right? Liz asked. I'm having trouble focusing on the road, Mindy answered. I think I have to pull over. You're going to have to drive. Hitting the brakes, Mindy began to slow down and steer their car to the shoulder of the road when suddenly the bright lights vanished. Everything went dark and panic set in. Liz, I can't see. I can't see anything. But Liz didn't have time to respond before they were hit from behind and their car veered off the road, past the shoulder, and into a ditch. Mindy, can you hear me? Wake up now. What? She asked as her eyes slowly opened. Mindy, do you know where you are? You're in the hospital, a man answered. Can you see me, Mindy? He asked. Yes, but you're blurry and everything is kind of dark, she informed the doctor before closing her eyes again. It hurts to look. Where does it hurt? My head. I have a terrible headache, she said. What happened? She asked, confused. You were in an automobile accident. Your assistant said you were rear-ended by a car on the freeway. Do you remember that? Not really, Mindy moaned. Mindy, I want you to think. She told us that the last thing you said was that you couldn't see. What happened? He asked. I'm not sure, Mindy answered as she started gaining some recollection of the events leading up to the accident. Oh, there were bright lights and a sudden pain in the back of my head. Then everything went dark like somebody turned the lights off, and I couldn't see the road anymore. Okay, we need to make sure you don't have internal injuries from the accident, but so far it looks like you got lucky, though you were going to need to take some x-rays and a CT scan. You might have a broken collarbone judging by the bruising. Let me take a look at your eyes, he said, pulling a light out of his pocket. Mindy winced at the irritation of the bright light shining in her eyes. After a bustle of activity where Mindy was rushed to radiology for a CT scan of her head and x-rays to rule out a fracture, she found herself in a private room on the third floor of the hospital. Within a few minutes, Liz walked into the room. Mindy, how are you? I've been so worried, she exclaimed. I've had better days. How are you? Did you get hurt? Mindy asked as she looked at her assistant, who resembled a dark shadow, a figure without features through her eyes. A little sore, but I'm okay. Don't worry, they checked me out from head to toe just to make sure, Liz smiled. I'm so sorry, Liz. I didn't mean to cause an accident. I don't know what happened. It all happened so fast. You don't have anything to be worried sorry about, Mindy. You did everything right. You slowed down and had your turn signal on. You were pulling off to the shoulder when we were hit by the car behind us. I'm just glad you were okay, Liz said. Oh, and I took the liberty of calling your mom. I thought you'd want her to know. She wants me to call her back as soon as we know what's going on. Thank you. Knowing my mom, she'll jump on the next plane. If she says anything, tell her I'm okay. I just need her to take care of Rose. I will. But Mindy? She sounded really concerned. Ooh, I will, but Mindy, she sounded really concerned. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already at the airport, but I will do my best to calm her. And don't worry about the concert. I'm on it. Remember, I've been trained by the best, meaning you. And the venue has been great. They've offered any resources or support we may need. They were more worried about you than anything else. You have lots of fans in the industry, and I don't want you to worry about a thing. I promise you can trust us. We won't let you down, Liz reassured her before saying that she'd be checking in on her often. She'd almost forgotten about the concert and wondered if Liz was ready to step in and fly solo with such a big production. Dozens of reasons why she needed to be there crossed her mind, and with every one of them, her head throbbed just a little more. As her heart raced with anxiety and the throbbing in her head continued, she realized that Liz was her only solution at this moment. She had no choice. Trust was the only answer. As Liz turned to head out of the hospital, as Liz turned to head out the hospital room, Mindy stopped her. Thank you, Liz. I trust you. You've got this. Mindy, it looks like your collarbone is broken, the doctor said as he entered the room. My head is pounding and everything is getting dark again, she moaned. After the physician examined her again and asked more questions, he told her his preliminary diagnosis. They're called ocular migraines, he explained. They're temporary and usually resolve on their own within an hour or so, but sometimes if they're left untreated, they can last longer. In severe cases, if untreated, they could cause permanent damage to a person's vision. We need to observe you for a few days while we find the appropriate medication to manage your symptoms. I can't stay here for a couple of days, she complained. You don't have a choice. Right now, you can't see, and I want to rule out the possibility that it could be something even more serious. It will take a few days to get all the test results back. Be patient with yourself. Little did the doctor know who he was talking to. A few days of bed rest would drive her stir crazy. She was advised to give her eyes an opportunity to rest, which would reduce the constriction that causes the migraines. One of the nurses offered to bring her an eye mask and some headphones if she wanted to listen to music, but she found that music only made her worry about being at work. Do you like to read? The nurse asked, trying to suggest an alternative to help her pass the time. One of the ways I like to decompress after a 12-hour shift is to take a nice long bath while listening to an audiobook. I like listening to books so much now that I rarely read books anymore, she said. Well, I was reading a book. A few minutes later, the nurse had downloaded the audiobook version of the Universal Relationship Rhythms onto her phone, and Mindy closed her eyes and listened. As she listened to the narrator, she found that she was surprisingly getting more out of the book. Even though she couldn't see the words, she could hear the message more clearly. There is a rhythm to everything in life, and if one thing is out of sync, it affects everything else. Your body is a perfect example. When something is neglected or injured, it affects your body. When your relationships are unhealthy, your mind will send you signals until you acknowledge and face whatever is not working. You cannot experience the state of contentment, harmony, and peace, the state where everything is in sync. Be present to your thoughts. Respect your body and what it is telling you. Your positive or negative thoughts are the gateway to your actions, and your brain can only process one at a time. When you tell yourself negative things, your actions will reflect that negativity. Listen to your heart and your mind. Trust what they are telling you. Trust is a choice, for it is in that choice that you create your own unique rhythm, the rhythm that empowers you to make all of your relationships, personally and professionally, the best they can be. When you choose to act according to the rhythm of your relationships, you are choosing to make a positive and healthy impact on yourself and everything around you. Choice is ongoing. All relationships are about creating a connection to something or someone, your health, your business, your finances, your family, and your loved ones. Choose with awareness while staying in tune with who you are. The audio was interrupted when her phone rang, and she immediately recognized her mom's special tone. Hi, Mom, she answered. Mindy, I'm so happy to hear your voice. We've been so worried. How are you? What are the doctors saying? Her mom spewed out the questions without taking a breath. Calm down, Mom, and take a breath. I'll be fine. How's Rose? She's fine, honey. She's really such a good girl. You, on the other hand, are another story. You are taking on too much, and now it's affecting your health, Mindy. I think this is a sign that you need to make some changes and get some rest, her mom pleaded. We've already discussed this, and I told you why I can't do that right now. I have to support Rose, so leaving my job is out of the question. And besides, the doctor says that what I have is treatable with the right medication. It's just going to take a couple of days, and I'll be home and back on the road before you know it, Mindy said. You stay there and listen to the doctors, her mom demanded. You aren't going anywhere by yourself. I'm coming to you. My flight leaves first thing tomorrow morning and should arrive by lunchtime. Mom, you don't need to do that. I'll be okay. I promise. I don't want to disrupt Rose's routine. Mindy, right now, you need someone to take care of you, and I know you won't admit it. So, like it or not, I'm coming. Get used to it. It looks like you don't have a choice. Accepting that this was one argument she was not going to win, Mindy knew it would be futile to object. Instead, she focused on something her mother had said. That's strange. I was just thinking about choices as I was listening to an audiobook, Mindy shared. What is the title of the book? Her mom asked, as she'd done dozens of times before. She and Mindy had long shared a common love for a good book. It's called The Universal Relationship Rhythms. I bought it because the title was catchy, but it's turning out to be very interesting, Mindy advised. I have that book on the shelf in the den. I bought it 3 or 4 months ago when it first came out, and I've read it twice since then. I was actually going to recommend that you read it, but I wasn't sure if you would make the time, her mom pointed out. How far are you into the book? I just finished listening to the part about choices when you called, Mindy answered, and now you tell me that I don't have a choice. You always have choices, Mindy, but you cannot make the right choices if you don't allow yourself to consider any other options. How can you make a choice if you don't even see it in front of you? Her mom questioned. Well, right now I'm having a little trouble seeing much of anything, replied Mindy. I have to admit that it would be nice to see Rose. Our time at home was so great, and I miss her already. Promise me that you won't say anything to her about the accident. She's fine, and of course your father and I won't tell her. Besides, I'll only be gone for a few days. Before she knows it, we'll be back, and we'll both know how much she'll love her dedicated grandpa time. So I'll see you tomorrow, dear. Her mom said so softly that Mindy could hear the worry in her usually strong tone. After hanging up the phone, Mindy thought about what her mom had said and suddenly started to see a connection that she hadn't seen before. She thought, is it possible that I'm having these ocular migraines and losing my sight because other parts of my life are not in sync and out of rhythm? How ironic for someone whose career is devoted to delivering music to hundreds of thousands of admiring listeners. Here I've spent hours, excuse me. Here, I've spent years listening to thousands of hit songs, and I know every word by heart. I know how the artist uses music to touch hearts, but I don't have a clue what my heart and body are trying to tell me. But if I want to make sure I can see again, it looks like I need to start respecting my body and listen to what it's telling me. Like Jamie said, I need to trust my instincts and base my choices on them. Mindy had one problem with that. Her heart had led her astray in the past, and she did not trust her instincts when it came to her personal life. When that happened, she had made a choice not to rely on them ever again. But her instincts were telling her that there was something else going on. She wondered, why is this happening? Why now? What am I not seeing in my life? And how can I figure out what it is? Still on the road, Rich was dealing with his own dilemma: to keep doing what he'd always done and hope he'd get a lucky break, or accept the fact that perhaps he'd been kidding himself and he just didn't have what it took to be a hit songwriter. Excuse me. Neither choice held much promise. Sorry. The former could take a lifetime to achieve, and the latter, well, he wasn't ready to entertain that one just yet. Oh my gosh. Sorry. I have to read this while I'm getting water. Excuse me. Oh, goodness gracious. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's tight. Oh my gosh. There we go. Okay. Now, unfortunately, though, Rich couldn't see another alternative or outcome. He didn't trust yet what was possible, and he didn't yet realize that the key to success was in recognizing that his choices were limited only by his mind and fears. It was late when Rich sat down to write. Rich's notebook. Each of us can stand for something good. Every time we rise, we elevate the place we live. We expand our souls by what we give. Each of us. Okay. That was interesting. Choices. I think that's a very exciting story. Mm-hmm. Sorry about the water issue. Okay. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Old Kinderhook.